Chapter 34 of Pushing to the Front by Orison Swett Marden. This librivox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Luke Sartor. Chapter 34: The Triumphs of the Common Virtues. The talent of success is nothing more than doing what you can do well, and doing well whatever you do, without a thought of fame. Longfellow. It is not a question of what a man knows, but what use he can make of what he knows. J. G. Holland. Seest thou a man diligent in business? He shall stand before kings. Solomon. The most encouraging truth that can be impressed upon the mind of youth is this: what man has done, man may do. Men of great achievements are not to be set on pedestals and reverenced as exceptions to the average of humanity. Instead, these great men are to be considered as setting a standard of success for the emulation of every aspiring youth. Their example shows what can be accomplished by the practice of the common virtues: diligence, patience, thrift, self-denial, determination, industry, and persistence. We can best appreciate the uplifting power of these simple virtues, which all may cultivate and exercise, by taking some concrete example of great success, which has been achieved by patient plodding toward a definite goal. No more illustrious example of success won by the exercise of common virtues can be offered than Abraham Lincoln, rail splitter and president. Probably Lincoln has been the hero of more American boys during the last 2 generations than any other American character. Young people look upon him as a marvelous being, raised up for a divine purpose, and yet if we analyze his character, we find it made up of the humblest virtues, the commonest qualities. The poorest boys and girls who look upon him as a demigod possess these qualities. The strong thing about Lincoln was his manliness, his straightforward, downright honesty. You could depend upon him. He was ambitious to make the most of himself. He wanted to know something, to be somebody, to lift his head up from his humble environment and be of some account in the world. He simply wanted to better his condition. It is true that he had a divine hunger for growth, a passion for a larger and completer life than that of those about him. But there is no evidence of any great genius, any marvelous powers. He was a simple man, never straining after effect. His simplicity was his chief charm. Everybody who knew him felt that he was a man, a large-hearted, generous friend, always ready to help everybody and everything out of their troubles. Whether it was a pig stuck in the mire, a poor widow in trouble, or a farmer who needed advice, he had a helpful mind, open, frank, transparent. He never covered up anything, never had secrets. The door of his heart was always open, so that anyone could read his inmost thoughts. The ability to do hard work and to stick to it is the right hand of genius and the best substitute for it. In fact, that is genius. If young people were to represent Lincoln's total success by 100, they would probably expect to find some brilliant faculty which would rank at least 50% of the total. But I think that the verdict of history has given his honesty of purpose, his purity and unselfishness of motive as his highest attributes, and certainly these qualities are within the reach of the poorest boy and the humblest girl in America. Suppose we rank his honesty, his integrity, 20% of the total. His dogged persistence, his ability for hard work, 10%. His passion for wholeness, for completeness, for doing everything to a finish, 10 more. His aspiration, his longing for growth, his yearning for fullness of life, 10 more. The reader can see that it would be easy to make up the 100% without finding any one quality which could be called genius. That the total of his character would be made up of the sum of the commonest qualities, the most ordinary virtues, within the reach of the poorest youth in the land. There is no one quality in his entire makeup so overpowering, so commanding, that it could be ranked as genius. What an inestimable blessing to the world, what an encouragement and inspiration to poor boys and poor girls that his great achievement can be accounted for by the triumphs in his character of those qualities which are beyond the reach of money, of family, of influence, but that are within the reach of the poorest and the humblest. In a speech to the people in Colorado mountains, Roosevelt said, "You think that my success is quite foreign to anything you can achieve. Let me assure you that the big prizes I have won are largely accidental. If I have succeeded, it is only as any one of you can succeed, merely because I have tried to do my duty as I saw it, in my home and in my business, and as a citizen. If when I die, the ones who know me best believe that I was a thoughtful, helpful husband, a loving, wise, and painstaking father, a generous, kindly neighbor, and an honest citizen, that will be a far more real honor, and will prove my life to have been more successful than the fact that I have ever been President of the United States. Had a few events over which no one had control been other than they were, it is quite possible I might never have held the high office I now occupy. But no train of events could accidentally make me a noble character or a faithful member of my home and community. Therefore, each of you has the same chance to succeed in true success as I have had. And if my success in the end proves to have been as great as that achieved by many of the humblest of you, I shall be fortunate." McKinley did not start with great mental ability. There was nothing very surprising or startling in his career. He was not a great genius, not notable as a scholar. He did not stand very high in school. He was not a great lawyer. He did not make a great record in Congress. But he had a good, level head. He had the best substitute for genius, the ability for hard work and persistence. He knew how to keep plodding, how to hang on, and he knew that the only way to show what he was made of in Congress was to stick to one thing, and he made a specialty of the tariff, following the advice of a statesman friend. The biographies of the giants of the race are often discouraging to the average poor boy, because the moment he gets the impression that the character he is reading about was a genius, the effect is largely lost upon himself, because he knows that he is not a genius, and he says to himself, "This is very interesting reading, but I can never do those things." But when he reads the life of McKinley, he does not see any reason why he should not do the same things himself, because there were no great jumps, no great leaps and bounds in his life from particular ability or special opportunity. He had no very brilliant talents, but he averaged well. He had good common sense and was a hard worker. He had tact and diplomacy, and made the most of every opportunity. Nothing can keep from success the man who has iron in his blood and is determined that he will succeed. When he is confronted by barriers, he leaps over them, tunnels through them, or makes a way around them. Obstacles only serve to stiffen his backbone, increase his determination, sharpen his wits, and develop his innate resources. The record of human achievement is full of the truth. There is no difficulty to him who wills. All the performances of human art, at which we look with praise and wonder, says Johnson, are instances of the resistless force of perseverance. It has been well said that from the same materials, one man builds palaces, another hovels, one warehouses, another villas. Bricks and mortar are mortar and bricks until the architect makes them something else. The boulder which was an obstacle in the path of the weak becomes a stepping stone in the pathway of the resolute. The difficulties which dishearten one man only stiffen the sinews of another, who looks on them as a sort of mental springboard by which to vault across the gulf of failure to the sure, solid ground of full success. One of the greatest generals on the Confederate side in the Civil War, Stonewall Jackson, was noted for his slowness. With this, he possessed great application and dogged determination. If he undertook a task, he never let go till he had it done. So, when he went to West Point, his habitual class response was that he was too busy getting the lesson of a few days back to look at the one of the day. He kept up this steady gait, and from the least promising plebe, came out 17th in a class of 70, distancing 53 who started with better attainments and better minds. His classmates used to say that, if the course was 10 years instead of 4, he would come out first. The world stands aside for the determined man. You will find no royal road to your triumph. There is no open door to the temple of success. One of the commonest of common virtues is perseverance. Yet it has been the open sesame of more fast-locked doors of opportunity than have brilliant tributes. Every man and woman can exercise this virtue of perseverance, can refuse to stop short of the goal of ambition, can decline to turn aside in search of pleasures that do but hinder progress. The romance of perseverance under a special difficulty is one of the most fascinating subjects in history. Tenacity of purpose has been characteristic of all characters who have left their mark on the world. Perseverance, it has been said, is the statesman's brain, the warrior's sword, the inventor's secret, the scholar's open sesame. Persistency is to talent what steam is to the engine. It is the driving force by which the machine accomplishes the work for which it was intended. A great deal of persistency, with a very little talent, can be counted on to go farther than a great deal of talent without persistency. You cannot keep a determined man from success. Take away his money, and he makes spurs of his poverty to urge him on. Lock him up in a dungeon, and he writes the immortal Pilgrim's Progress. Stick to a thing and carry it through in all its completeness and proportion, and you will become a hero. You will think better of yourself. Others will exalt you. Thoroughness is another of the common virtues which all may cultivate. The man who puts his best into every task will leave far behind the man who lets a job go with the comment, That's good enough. Nothing is good enough unless it reflects our best. Daniel Webster had no remarkable traits of character in his boyhood. He was sent to Phillips Exeter Academy in New Hampshire and stayed there only a short time when a neighbour found him crying on his way home and asked the reason. Daniel said he despaired of ever making a scholar. He said the boys made fun of him for always being at the foot of the class, and that he had decided to give up and go home. A friend said he ought to go back and see what hard study would do. He went back, applied himself to his studies with determination to win, and it was not long before he silenced those who had ridiculed him by reaching the head of the class and remaining there. Fidelity to duty has been a distinguishing virtue in men who have risen to positions of authority and command. It had been observed that the dispatches of Napoleon rang with the word glory. Wellington's dispatches centered around the common word duty. Nowadays, people seem unwilling to tread the rough path of duty, and by patience and steadfast perseverance, step into the ranks of those the country delights to honour. Every little while I get letters from young men who say, if they were positively sure that they could be a Webster in law, they would devote all their energies to study, fling their whole lives into their work. Or if they could be an Edison in invention, or a great leader in medicine, or a merchant prince like Wanamaker or Marshall Field, they could work with enthusiasm and zeal and power and concentration. They would be willing to make any sacrifice, to undergo any hardship, in order to achieve what these men have achieved. But many of them say they do not feel that they have the marvelous ability, the great genius, the tremendous talent exhibited by those leaders, and so they are not willing to make the great exertion. They do not realize that success is not necessarily doing some great thing, that it is not making a tremendous strain to do something great, but that it is just honestly, earnestly living the everyday, simple life. It is by the exercise of the common, everyday virtues. It is by trying to do everything one does to a complete finish. It is by trying to be scrupulously honest in every transaction. It is by always ringing true in our friendships, by holding a helpful, accommodating attitude toward those about us, by trying to be the best possible citizen, a good, accommodating, helpful neighbour, a kind, encouraging father. It is by all these simple things that we attain success. There is no great secret about success. It is just a natural, persistent exercise of the commonest everyday qualities. We have seen people in the country in the summertime, trampling down the daisies and the beautiful violets, the lovely wildflowers, in their efforts to get a branch of showy flowers off a large tree, which perhaps would not compare in beauty and delicacy and loveliness to the things they trampled under their feet in trying to procure it. Oh, how many exquisite experiences, delightful possible joys we trample under our feet in straining after something great, in trying to do some marvelous thing that will attract attention and get our names in the papers. We trample down the finer emotions. We spoil many of the most delicious things in life in our scrambling and greed to grasp something which is unusual, something showy that we can wave before the world in order to get its applause. In straining for effect, In the struggle to do something great and wonderful, we miss the little successes, the sum of which would make our lives sublime. And often, after all this straining and struggling for the larger, for the grander things, we miss them. And then we discover to our horror what we have missed on the way up. What sweetness, what beauty, what loveliness, what a lot of common, homely, cheering things we have lost in the useless struggle. Great scientists tell us that the reason why the secrets of nature have been hidden from the world so long is because we are not simple enough in our methods of reasoning, that investigators are always looking for unusual phenomena, for something complicated, that the principles of nature's secrets are so extremely simple that men overlook them in their efforts to see and solve the more intricate problems. It is most unfortunate that so many young people get the impression that success consists in doing some marvelous thing, that there must be some genius born in the man who achieves it, else he could not do such remarkable things. End of Chapter 34, The Triumphs of the Common Virtues. Recording by Luke Sartor, Brisbane, Queensland.